Okay, we're going to continue on with the work that we did yesterday. I compiled the numbers and used a majority of the numbers. I wasn't able to use all of them, but I was able to use a majority of the numbers to compile the data. You'll be compiling the data for the cubit lengths. This will be pretty easy. Again, we rounded this to the nearest half of an inch. So you'll be able to start at 12 and then label accordingly, 12 and a half, 13, 13 and a half, and then be able to place the data points accordingly and list out these numbers. With the great span, we rounded to the nearest fourth of an inch. Well, the number of tally marks that you have won't accommodate all the numbers, so you're going to have to make an adjustment. In between 5 and the first hash mark, you'll have to put a hash mark in between. This will be the quarter, this will be 2/4 or 1/2, and then you'll have to put another hash mark in between 3/4, 6, and you'll continue to do this until you get all the way down so that you have a data spot for each of the numbers for the great span, because you were rounding to the nearest quarter of an inch. For the joint length, we were rounding to the nearest eighth of an inch. I want you to start your data set with the number 1. And again, you're going to have to do the exact same thing we did with the great span, and we're going to have to divide it up a little bit. This is 1/8, this is 2/8, dividing it up, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, so on and so forth, until we get to all the numbers that are in that data set. You will then track all these numbers. Each data set will contain 30 separate numbers. So you should have 30 X's on each of these lines going up to analyze the data. We then will be compiling the numbers. So what you will be doing is you'll be adding all of the fractions up, all of the numbers, all of the mixed numbers, compiling them up, and then dividing them by the number in the data set. Well, in this case, for each of these problems, you're going to be dividing by the number 30 because each of these data sets have 30 separate numbers. You'll see on pages 259, they talk about evening out a data set. What does that mean? Well, what that means is taking two numbers, for example, a mixed number, 5 and 1/4, and 4 and 3/4. I know that 1/4 and 3/4 equals 1 whole, and I know 4 and 5 equal 9. So 9 plus 1 whole, these numbers here equal 10. So this whole data set equals 10. I also know that 5 and 1/2 and 2 and 1/2, I can add the 2 halves to make a whole. 5 and 2 is 7. 7 plus that 1 is 8, and I have 8 in this group. Now I can't even out my remaining numbers because I know 1/2, which I could then change in this case to 2/4. Well, that doesn't really add up to a whole when I add 2/4 and 3/4. What it does equal is 5/4. I can add the 4 and the 3 to get 7. I then add 10 plus the 8, giving me 18, plus 7 is 25, and I have 25 and 5/4, which I know equals 26 and 1/4. So this is what we mean when we talk about evening out a data set. We're going to work on pages 258 and 259 as your math homework. If you have questions, please reach out to me. I will be monitoring Canvas all day long. I'm sure you'll have questions. I know some of this may be a little bit confusing, but we'll work through it together. Look forward to hearing from you, and we will see you tomorrow.